Miles Turner would also be a great fit for this team that we have a question on. How is that for a segue? This was asked a little bit ago, but it was pre the Pelicans loss to the Grizzlies and then pre their victory on Monday night. But Rome 8180 asked, like, their defense and offense have improved during this recent stretch. Is this a function of something that's changed? Just random noise, weak competition? And he has a second part to that. But so the Pelicans, since they were like 500, so going back to like, I think the date was on this November 9th. They are 7-3 over their last 10 games. Third in net rating, 6.7, eighth in offense, and third in defense. Have you noticed anything about their improvement? I made some observations myself, but I'm just curious as to what you think. And look, they've done it, by the way. Like, CJ McCollum has missed time. Brandon Ingram just missed Monday night's game. They have not, for a team that's like firmly in the mix, they have not had like their full cachet of players available much this year.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, is just, generally getting some bodies back. Although, like you said, I mean, the problem with all of this is I'm assuming that this time frame includes the 45-point win over the Warriors when they didn't play any of their starters. And so if you're talking about defensive rating and net rating and anything like that, it's all just like completely destroyed by that. Congratulations, you beat one of the worst benches in the league into the dust, and your net rating is going to be juiced for like the next 2 months probably from that. So yeah, that kind of punts on the question, I think, because like what that does, I was taking their last 6 games, which included that Warriors one, and this is probably a little further beyond when this question is asking about. But if you take that out and say the Warriors just go in and beat them in a close game, or it's close or whatever, you're talking about 3-3 over the last 6, and the Pelicans wins were over the Bulls, Spurs, and Thunder. So like, how good do you feel about that? How probative is that really of the team's actual quality? I don't know, but it's definitely not the same thing as just looking at what their net rating is, because it's going to be messed up for a while. I'm kind of more interested in like some of the similar roster balance questions, with respect to, does CJ McCollum have a role? Like, is he superfluous, is the word that Rome 8180 used?
Yeah, that's the second part of the question is CJ McCollum superfluous on the Pelicans?
And related to that is because the Pelicans look really good when Jose Alvarado's in the game. It kind of makes more sense because he's just looking to distribute, and the Pelicans have a lot of high usage, worthwhile offensive guys that need the ball, and Alvarado just gets off the ball. And so that's helpful. I think I guess I should answer the first part of the question. I think maybe this is just sort of what we expected the Pelicans to be like from the outset, which is they're going to score a ton. Their defense is going to be a question. Again, that defensive rating is iffy because of that Warriors game where they gave up 83 points. I think you were higher on the Pelicans, I think, than I was at the start of the season, but this is sort of what we expected, more or less, where, they're going to be good to really good, and it's going to be offensively driven. And if there's enough stops in there, then they're like a 50-win team potentially. That's roughly what we're looking at. But the roster construction thing is interesting because I think it just depends on the answers to questions that we still don't have yet, which is like, how much should Zion have the ball in his hands? Because if the answer is a lot, then CJ McCollum could be replaced by more of a catch and shoot guy, or someone that's like, he could attack, from the second side when the ball gets swung and run a pick and roll, but you don't need a high usage, get into the lane and create your own, 17-footer in that context so much. And if it's that Zion doesn't need the ball as much, well, then you need at least another really good defender in that lineup alongside Herb Jones, because Zion's defense is, crippling sometimes, and you're not getting quite enough from certainly McCollum. Ingram is like passable to, depending on the night you catch him. Valanciunas is probably a subpar defender. So I think that focusing on McCollum is kind of the easier thing, because if you say, well, Ingram and Zion, there's your 1-2, let's get role players around them that defend, maybe. But I don't know that we're sure yet that Zion is someone that should have the ball all the time, that the offense should run through. That might be the case. So I think before you look at like balancing this roster or moving McCollum, that's not what the question's asking. But if you're saying he's superfluous, then that's sort of implied, I guess, because he's being paid a ton. So you can't just not play him. I think you just need to figure more out. I think that I don't have a theory of like, what is the optimal lineup and playing style and sort of usage distribution on this Pelicans team. And until we have a better idea of that, I think you probably just want to keep as much like talent in the fold as possible and playing. So I would still give the edge to McCollum over Alvarado in that regard. But it's a worthwhile question. And I think it just highlights like we're still kind of early in this experiment because everybody's hurt all the time and we haven't got a sustained look at what the best version of the Pelicans is.
This is fun because I think we disagree fundamentally on it. I think that this has been really informative for them. And I think a big shift is, and part of this actually might be because of the availability issues, but like Zion has the ball in his hands more, which is absolutely the answer, especially during the regular season, just to bust up some of these defenses. His drives are up during this stretch. They've had him run more pick and rolls. I also like the look more, which is why like the Larry Nance Jr., Zion Williamson front court, like the noise on there, like there's a lot of statistical noise on it, I'll say, but like there are just moments where it's like, well, if that was Miles Turner, and Miles Turner's a better chance of holding up over the course of a season and defensively a lot at the 5. I also think, and I won't say overall, I think Zion's kind of gotten a little bit better on defense this year away from the ball. On the ball, as you mentioned, it feels like there can just be a lot of damaging possessions for him. And I also feel like that's why someone like Miles Turner could help, because Valanciunas is more of just like that's not someone like, if you need him as like your rim protector who doesn't have to make a lot of complicated reads, fine. Larry Nance Jr. is like kind of on his best at the perimeter, like making a lot of switches, similar to Jackson Hayes, who hasn't really played this year. Zion has just done better with the off-ball stuff, where doesn't feel like he's getting burned as much by ball watching. He's making just like if you watch him, like he's kind of moving all over the place. Players are shooting under 58% against him at the rim this year, under 55% during this stretch that we're talking about. There's something here, I think. And I do the point that you made, I totally forgot about the Warriors no hands on deck win that the belt. Like they had no, like it wasn't all hands on deck. It was no hands on deck for Golden State. So I do think there's definitely noise in the schedule, but I think this team is just like, it's ready and it's on the cusp if it's healthy, and the type of ball pressure they can provide, if they can trust Zion to be rotating when you have Jose Alvarado and Herb Jones and even Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy, that's huge. And with CJ McCollum, maybe he's superfluous or awkward during the regular season. That is absolutely a player I want in this rotation come playoff time, where to have that third ball handling, like third legitimate ball handling option. We're not talking about like, I mean, maybe we are talking about Milwaukee a little bit just because Giannis's ball handling has gotten better and he can do so much with the ball in his hands. Like having that third player who can just self-create for others, or self-create for himself even, but also table set for others. I think there's a pathway to making it work. And I'm wondering if and Roman mentioned this, like, are we jaded a little bit because of how slow CJ McCollum was to start the season? I want him on this team. And he's not, I wouldn't view him as just like mission critical, I guess. But I think that he's absolutely someone who's going to help them in the postseason, maybe even more so than the regular season.
I think I agree in theory that Zion with the ball makes the most sense. But then, so I get what I kept thinking of as you're talking was, is Dyson Daniels like low key the like major swing piece for this team? Because I think if you're talking about the playoffs, I think CJ is going to get targeted. I think Zion will still get targeted. I think Valanciunas is going to get called up to defend. So you just have so many. If Daniels could be a reliable shooter, and I think Daniels has immense defensive potential because he's a big guard and he's a good passer, and he just sort of makes, in the best version of this Pelicans team that is balanced and less exploitable in the playoffs, I think that a premium, like top, like 90th percentile of his potential, Dyson Daniels is like the right guy to be in there versus maybe a McCollum, who would be a huge luxury as a third ball handler scorer, but who I think will get attacked a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm being maybe too pessimistic, but that's sort of, I've been like a notch below you on the Pelicans, I think, throughout. And maybe that's just because I still want to see more to prove to me that like the offense, defense, low usage, high usage mix works. But yeah, it's a good question. I think like we just need we need to see the signs like be sustained over a long period and for everybody to stay healthy, which is a big ask on this team.
I think my roundabout take was that Jonas Valanciunas is probably the one who's superfluous on this roster. And we've seen like they're doing a lot of this success they're having now with not rebounding as well as they were before. And I know Valanciunas is shooting the ball well, but the most dynamic version of the Pelicans, I think probably if it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't include him, it includes an upgrade over Jonas Valanciunas would be my point there. And also, you mentioned Dyson Daniels, 41.5% from three over his last 10 games. That's talk about a swing piece. If that's like something, it's like negligible volume, but if he's just hitting ultra wide open threes every now and again with the way he can work in space with the ball, a couple of his defensive ubiquity, that's massive.
Yeah, if you have him and Herb running around like causing trouble, like that's a pretty good start. I still think you need someone to keep people away from the rim, and maybe that's Nance. I mean, Miles Turner. Can it just be Miles Turner?
I'm happy. I did get a DM saying Pelicans fans are not my idea specifically, but I was lampooned for basically the past 2 years for saying that they need to get Miles Turner. Not need, but like, and I was willing to listen. Like we hadn't seen Zion and Jonas, but I was DM saying that like Pelicans fans are coming around on the idea of Miles Turner now. So I'm glad to hear that. At least I wasn't completely off base.
I feel like that's been the most no-brainer destiny. I mean, Charlotte was thrown around a lot, but nobody needs to go to Charlotte now.
He is. I'd be interested to see like the splits with Zion on and off of like opponents over the last 10 games are shooting 82.6% at the rim against Jonas Valanciunas. Like there could be an element of overattacks. Like what is he trying to cover up? But like that's pretty good. This is not the ideal front court pairing.